The things I want to kind of cover off the top that I think are important organizationally to communicate about is this is kind of a unique press conference in that it's our 15th season in Oklahoma City as the Thunder. And we're extremely, extremely grateful for the 15 years that we've had, the players that we've had, past and present, all of our staff that we've had, past and present, our community support, our fans, the civic leadership, everybody that it takes to create a basketball team from scratch. Looking back over the last 14 years as we head into 15, it's been a remarkable journey. 11 of those 14 years, we had an 11-year run where we had the second best record in the NBA, the fourth best record in all of pro sports cumulatively, and we've been to the postseason 10 out of those 14 years. And that doesn't happen without tremendous cooperation, partnership, collaboration, persistence. And it's not just the organization, it's also the community and all the people around it that help support the team. So I think it's really important to recognize that. At the same time, you reflect back, you only have, 1/15th anniversary, but when I think back to where we started in 2008, we were looking up a pretty steep mountain. We didn't have a team name. We had no uniforms. Some would argue we didn't have much of a team at the time. We didn't really have pens or pencils. But we climbed the mountain. We fought it as long as we could. We stayed up there for a long time. We had, like I said, a pretty good run of sustained success. And now we're facing another climb. And it's equally as rare. It's pretty rare to be in a situation where you're starting from nothing, as we did. And before I go further, I do want to acknowledge that we've had some season ticket members that have been with us since 2008. They've been here forever, and hopefully for longer as well. I can't name every single person, but kind of randomly picked 5 families that I want to acknowledge just because I think it's important to do that as a representative. So we want to thank the Adler family, the Bridges family, the Fraley family, the Moore family, the Ryder family, and the Zorn family as representatives of the fact that these people have been season ticket holders for 14 years going on 15 years now. And like I said before, it really takes everybody to be able to do that type of thing. The challenge we have in front of us now, as I said before, it's the second climb, so to speak, is unique because it's a totally different era. It's a totally different era of basketball. It's a totally different era in terms of the industry. We're still third smallest market, but we also are in a time where the things that were commonplace or conventional years ago would probably seem unconventional now. That's it's just a different time, which makes it a totally unique challenge and a different challenge for us. It's also easy to forget that just 2 years ago we were still on the mountain, before we had descended to start the second climb, and we're obviously very early in that. But 2 years ago, Shea, Lou, Bays, those guys were playing meaningful minutes in the postseason game in the bubble, and it's been a remarkable 14 years when you think about all the things that were kind of accomplished within it. As far as this season goes, I think we have a pretty wide bandwidth in terms of the potential outcomes of the team. We project to be probably about the second youngest team in the history of the NBA, second only to last year's Thunder team. When you have an older team, or like maybe a team that has more track record, whether it's good or bad, your bandwidth is shorter. You can predict those types of outcomes a lot easier because there's more known. There also is probably a little bit more of a cap on the potential of the team because of those things being more known. And the floor might be a little bit different as well. But our age and relative inexperience is absolutely going to be a positive for the team over a long period of time, because inexperience will turn to experience and our guys will get older and better as time goes on. But that's the beauty of watching any team, any young team in pro sports, is you're actually watching it kind of evolve in front of you. And I don't think anybody would say that we're not a work in progress. At the same time, I think we're a better team than we were the start of the time last year, and we're going to be a better team at the end of this season, absolutely, because of the fact that we have some very young players that are going to continually improve. So our age gives us the potential to recognize the high side of our bandwidth. Our age also gives us the potential to recognize the downside. In order to kind of be scalable and make sure that the team continues to improve year after year, we have to have a standard of play. Last year, we talked in this setting about a baseline. That was a big thing. This year, I think we want to try to establish what those standards would be for us so we can measure progress on our own internal scorecard. That starts with preparation, competing physically, mentally, and emotionally. That sounds easy. It's extremely hard for professional athletes to do that on a consistent basis year to year, and especially younger teams. We have to play physical. I mentioned that at the end of last season as well. That's not a trait that's commonly associated with younger teams. We have to be committed to a style of play that doesn't just work for 1 year, but can be scaled and adapted and modified as time goes on, and as we add new players and our existing players continue to evolve and improve. And we can't seek shortcuts that are actually setbacks and waiting. And that's the way, I think that's the challenge of any type of building process in your own lives, in our own lives, in work or in business, whatever it might be. Shortcuts that lead you to setbacks that are just kind of latent and waiting there, that's what we want to actively try to avoid. Now, if we want to recognize the potential of the team now and in the future, we also have to overcome the common distractions that generally young teams have to confront at some point in their evolution. So, for instance, young teams, and I think our guys are spot on with this stuff, but I think that we have to be cognizant that these are generally the things that are headwinds for younger teams in sports, but especially the NBA. Not seeing the season as a process, but seeing as like a day-to-day judgment, that is going to create, that's going to slow progress. But you have to see the season as a bit of a marathon or a test. Getting overly concerned with statistics and accomplishments. Everybody has personal ambitions. That's great. You need to have that. How does that fit within the framework of the team? That's another thing that's pretty common. Communication internally. A lot of times, younger teams, they don't communicate with each other because they're not comfortable with that yet. Usually happens as you get older. Remember, we got young people. And a lot of times, they communicate with people that aren't with the team. And those people's incentive may not be what's best for the team. So those are common things that happen in all walks of life, and the NBA is no different than that. Letting other people set the agenda for what's important or what the priority should be or what the outlook should be, that's another common threshold that every young team has to face at one point or another. And just the general, wanting to just skip steps that are necessary to go through in order to get to the goals that you want to ultimately achieve. So for us, like I said before, to punch above our weight, a lot of that comes down to what the priorities are. What are we disciplined in how we're stacking our priorities? we're going to learn those things over time because every young team hits that. You know, do you want to skin your knee, bang your head, and then learn it, or can we be intentional, building that into our mindset that these are normal things that you have to confront? Every young team is going to face that. Essentially, what I'm saying is that our pace of learning and maturity has to outpace our experience and our age. And that's why I think that's the great thing about our team. I think we're talented, but I think a lot of times people feel that younger teams have a hard time winning, but they don't identify the reasons why. Part of the reasons why is these are things that generally people learn later on in their careers. And that's why the older teams, when they say veteran teams, they're not just talking about older teams. They're talking about understanding some of the things we're talking about. So we want to be really intentional about talking and putting those things in front of us because that can really help our team, reach the potential that they have for the current season. The West is going to do that on its own anyway because the West is so tough. Much has been made about our schedule, and it's the toughest schedule. It is. It's also going to make us better because we have to go out there every single night and compete against, the best teams in the league. And I think that's actually going to do us a lot of favors in terms of our progress. As long as we have that baseline we talked about and we're able to observe the season as a whole, which I think we will. The other thing about accelerating beyond our age and our experience is something that every team has to deal with is there's going to be predictable distractions that happen in every season. That's in the modern NBA. That's in the modern world that we live in today. It's, whether it's, and you guys have heard me talk about social media. Social media is great. I'm not saying that it's got so many positive things, but it really has nothing to do with winning basketball games. If anything, it's probably more directed towards luring you away from that. Not intentionally, but there's a business that is being conducted there, and we have a business that we're conducting here. And part of being a really good NBA team is being able to perform without necessarily getting distracted by that. The sooner a young team, this is again my opinion, can understand that that's not a penalty. That's the price of admission. That's the price of admission for being an NBA player, for being a professional athlete, for being an NBA team. That's not a penalty. This is what you have to overcome and what you have to deal with, and you still have to perform at a high level. And once I think the team realizes that that's a test of their maturity and discipline, to be able to separate those things, again, older teams do a pretty good job with that. And that's one of the reasons why their performance is more consistent. There's going to be distractions, and there's going to be things that you have to block out. That doesn't mean they're all bad. It just means they're not necessarily all driving towards your goals. And so a lot of that is focus and priorities. Now, I also think we have a pretty long runway with this particular team. Shea is just entering his, what we call pre-prime years. Josh, Chet, some of the other guys we have are still, a few years away from getting to that point. But at some point here in the near future, you're going to have those tenures overlap, so to speak. And that's extremely exciting when you think about the progress that the guys have made, even this summer, when you see some of the players physically at Media Day without them even touching a basketball. You'll see that these guys really are young and they can improve rapidly physically. And it's really exciting to think about, when we get a few of these core guys all kind of overlapping during their prime years, we could have a lot of fun with that. That doesn't mean we can't be successful and win a bunch of games in the near term as well. But we're working towards that period of time where those guys are overlapping, and when they do, if we prepare physically, mentally, and emotionally, and we have these things prioritized like I talked about, I think we have a chance to be pretty good. Now, unless something like the CBA or something we're not aware of disrupts kind of the infrastructure, we should have the team in a good position based on how the contracts are aligned and the ages of the team, and we should be able to continually come back year after year and say, hey, I think we're going to be better. And part of that's just going to be dealing with the adversities that we deal with and also managing the successes that we have. A lot's been made about the schedule. I talked to you about that. As far as this season goes, nobody knows how a season's going to go. I know people have tried to put a number on the games that Chet would cost us, and I would say save your predictions, burn your assumptions. That's. I mean, I don't know what good that really does. At the end of the day, there's no facts about the future. There's only opinions, and that's fine. I'm just really happy that I don't have to be in a position like you guys to make predictions about things that everybody knows. Number one, no one's ever going to remember, and number two, you don't have any clue, and I don't have any clue either. Last year, they thought we were going to win 9 games. When we had CP and Gallo, I think they thought we were going to. You have to let the season play out, and I've done this for 20-something years now. Predicting the future is not in my wheelhouse, and you have to let the season play out because you never know. It's not just your season you're predicting. You're also predicting 29 other team seasons. So, I don't know how it will go, but I know that there have been a lot of years where people have said this is what's going to happen, and in the first 10 games they're running scared from those predictions. So let's wait for it to play out before we decide this is what it's going to be, because I really don't have an idea. Because you have a young team, like I said before, if we prioritize those things, we'll punch above our weight. I'm pretty sure about that. I mean, we had a top 10 defense last year for a lot of the season. Does that mean we're going to have a top 10 defense this year? No, we got to go back to zero and learn those lessons, not let other things block in. But we're also not playing the same teams either. The other teams are different. The deck gets shuffled every year, including our own. When we get back to the postseason, it's not going to happen because of one season. It's not going to be like, well, this was the year that did it. If it happens this season, it won't be because of what happens between now and the postseason. It'll happen because of a series of seasons. That's always the way things occur. At the time, things, they seem arduous. They seem, far-reaching, but it's always a series of seasons that adds up. What we're looking for is overall improvement over a long period of time. That's not the most sexy, exciting thing that I could say to you. But, it's more persuasive to create this illusion of control than create the reality of uncertainty. It's like, so that's not what we're trying to do. I'm not trying to mislead anybody, but it would be easy to try to find something that's more catchy and exciting. But we just want long-term overall improvement. That doesn't mean every season is going to go the same way. So, basketball teams are not like something you wind up mechanically and they just go on like a metronome. It's not a Kraftwerk song. And I like Kraftwerk. I think they're hugely, hugely important to modern music. But it's very, very syncopated, right? It's not like something that Steve Gadd's playing or, Jeff Porcaro's playing or Bernard Purdy's playing. It's very, very mechanical. There's no feel in that. That's just not how people or teams work. There's going to be a lag. There's going to be sometimes it goes faster. Over time, we want to have more years where we feel like we make progress than we don't. And for us, progress is dictated by where we start and where we finished. Last year, we were coming into camp. You guys had a lot of questions about Josh Giddey. You saw him play 5 minutes in Summer League, and there were some significant concerns over those 5 minutes. And we were projecting those 5 minutes over the next 15 years. By the end of the season, we had more information. Trey Mann, Aaron Wiggins, Jeremiah, they were totally unknowns. By the end of the season, I think we had a lot more information to say, hey, these guys might have a chance to be part of the team that climbs the second mountain. We don't know that for sure because there's going to be a lot of competition for those 17 spots. But we just added another group of guys, and we'll have more information about them in the future as well. So progress is, for us, it's all about the terrain in which you have to cover, that from where you're starting. And I think we're going to make progress this year. I'm pretty confident that we will, based on what I've seen so far, based on my belief in the coaching staff, based on how I've seen the players, the mentality of the players, because your mentality and your mindset creates your reality. I really, really feel good about that. And in the years that you get some tough things that come your way, like Chet's injury, you have to keep going. You just can't give in to that. You have to continue to follow through on the mindset that, over a long period of time, we want to have more years, or more good years than not. As far as Chet, I also want to say that the thing we probably lose more than anything, and because I think developmentally I'm not concerned about that. I actually think having a year to learn the league, to experience the cadence of the league, to work on his body, to understand the personnel in the league and all the different schemes he's going to be seeing, I think that's going to be actually extremely beneficial. The area where we probably lose the most is tactically being able to see him and how he interacts with the core of the rest of the guys. We just won't get that exposure. And I can't sugarcoat that for anybody. I want you guys to always look at me and say, he's telling us what he really thinks, and that's what I really think. This is a bit of a setback tactically for us because we're not going to get to see that. I don't think it will be developmentally, and I also think that the team will absolutely figure out and morph into a lot of different things we wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to see if Chet was playing. Obviously, it'd be better if he was. But the fact that he isn't, I don't think is self-limiting. I think it's limiting in that we won't get to see kind of the interaction, but we're going to. We're going to get to that. We're going to go a year without it, which is just how it goes. It's just how sports goes. Just a few more things, and I'll get to all your questions. So I think, in general, people are, including myself, including everyone here in the organization, nobody's really good at identifying the time it takes to reach your aspirations. So if we said, okay, how long is it going to take to get to Philadelphia if we had to drive? Everybody in here would give an answer. It would probably be wrong, unless you looked at your phone, right? Which would be cheating in that case. So the other thing is, I think everybody always underestimates how hard things are that they want to do. I want to lose 15 pounds. When you really do it, it's easy to say, but it's hard to do. In the words of the Thunder philosopher Royale Ivy, easy to say is hard to do. That's another great thing for the young team blind spots we were talking about. Easy to say is hard to do. That was why we had Roy here, and Perk had, you can't get bored with the process. So those guys are, they're scholars of Thunder University. But what I was saying earlier about the fact that people are bad at predicting things in general, the other thing is any form of resistance is seen as catastrophic. So when you set your goal or you predict your time, when you run into any type of resistance or headwind, it's the end of the world. Because to start with, you're probably wrong to even be predicting things instead of just putting one foot in front of the other to solve problems the way it's most effective to. And remember, it's supposed to be challenging and difficult no matter what. And that's another thing I think for us we talk about internally, which is we live in a world of immediate convenience. People don't even go to the grocery store anymore. People don't want to sit in a line, right? You want to order a pair of shoes? You don't even have to go to the store. You just hit a button. It creates a comfort crisis, because then when you actually have to do something for yourself, it seems like you're being asked to climb Everest. And in our path and what we're doing, in order to really enjoy the best parts, you have to also have some conscious discomfort on the hard parts, because that's what's going to allow you to enjoy the other parts, even more. It makes it sweeter when you're not just accustomed to just everything being laid out perfectly for you. So we're heading, into another season. There'll be plenty of adversities, but there's going to be plenty of great moments. We're not going to hit a button and make it easy for everybody. We can't do that. We're not going to wrap everybody in bubble tape and shield them from difficulties, because I think that's what's going to make getting to the top of the second mountain of sustainable success even that much more meaningful. And I'd say that to our fans as well. It's like having kids in the backseat of your car, driving somewhere, saying, when are we going to get there? When's it? We would all laugh about that, because the answer is, I don't know. We're going to Philly. I don't know how long it takes, right? Now you can look at your phone and say exactly this, but you wouldn't want to tell your kids that, right? Because it just means they're going to scream and yell even longer. I speak from experience on that. And then you can threaten you're going to take the car to the side of the road, and even though you're not going to do that, because it's going to make even longer for them to scream and yell in the back. What I'm trying to say is there's an immature way that you go through problem solving, and there's an immature way you go through problem solving. And the car ride, I think, is a good example of the struggle that we all have with convenience and ease in the world that we live in today. We're not trying to make it convenient, because I think that's going to limit our potential. When you adjust your path, you're limiting your potential. At the same time, we can't tell you exactly what's going to happen, but I would rather aspire for something like a second mountain, a sustained stay on that, than just speeding myself to a situation that could otherwise be avoided with patience. I think that this is the last point I want to make. I think this is one of the more representative Thunder teams that we've had. And the reason I say that is because we've talked a lot about the city, the state, the fact that we pull a lot from the values of the city and the state to try to build and sustain our organization. And on this particular group, there's a lot of underdogs with this particular group. There's a lot of commitment with this particular group. There's loyalty with this particular group, and there's resilience. The commitment is, we've had guys working their tails off all summer, all over the world. In a gym near you, there's been a Thunder player that has been crushing it. Loyalty. Shea, he's made a long-term commitment here. Lou has made a long-term commitment here. Mike Muscala, Kenrich Williams. I think that is appreciated in our community, because they are not just basketball players here. They're also people of the population, people of the city and the state. The resilience within the team, I think the team has been extraordinarily resilient. I think Mark deserves a ton of credit for that, as well as just the character of the guys. They've battled, they've fought. A lot of them, that's how they've gotten to the place that they are. Not every single one of them has been handed an NBA career and a silver platter. They've all had to overcome something. We got guys that are too skinny. We have guys that don't have a position. We have guys that weren't drafted. And to me, that's what makes the team very representative. Like, great. That's what we're trying to morph into something that can be really special for the city and the team, in that relationship. And I think that's one of the reasons why being a Thunder fan right now, I always talk about the fans that bleed blue. Being on that journey, seeing these characteristics within the team that you're supporting and riding with that team, that to me is that's what I want for people. Like I was walking through the airport the other day. And I was just walking, and someone yelled from behind me, thunder up. And God, that made me feel good. It made me feel really good. And what it made me feel is like, God, I really want the people here to experience like another postseason. And I was at Pearl Jam the other night, and I was looking out at the crowd and how full it was and how just people were on their feet. Like, there's something about that type of energy in the city that's just awesome. And when we get there, it's going to be not because we took the path of the easiest path. It's because we did it organically. And there's going to be 17 guys that have fought their ass off to have a spot on that team. And it's getting harder because the team's getting better. A few years ago, we were just looking for NBA players. We're 2 seasons in, and we're going to cut NBA players from our team that aren't going to make the team because we still have enough spots. So when we climb the second mountain, there's a lot of guys that want to be part of that team that scales it, that's part of the catalyst, part of those catalyst moments that get there. And I know I can speak for everybody in this building, like we're going to work hard. We're going to work as hard as we possibly can. But we're not going to watch the clock. We're going to be pace setters on that because it's going to make it more meaningful when we get there. And I'm just really grateful. Like I said, I started with some of these names, the Adlers and the Zorns, and we're working for them. We want them to have the same thing that we want to have. And I think that's important in a small city like this. And the journey continues in year 15. And when we get to year 20, we'll look back and year 25. But the first 15 years, you smashed a lot in there, and it's been a great ride, and we're excited for the next 15.